Alright, motherfuckers. So I'm over here with the next big splash in the Renaissance, right? I'm always running the Renaissance. So here we go. I was curious, right? I was happening, right? I was trying to play Petscop again, and it always gets me to the best shit in real life. I was trying to say, I'm never gonna go into the Petscop related shit. Let's just say it got me over. I wanted to look up the origin of the term Marv, right, in Marvel, right? What is a Marv, right? Because I was curious about the name Marvin. I myself, right, go and it's like, no, it's a miracle, right? A wonder. It's like it's amazing, right? But I realize, okay, but it goes from mirror, right? Same mirror, mirror. Same mirror, miracle. Same mare in Maryland. Mermaid, right? And the same Mar, right? Same Mar and Marvel, right? Obviously. But the idea is that I've gone in and I was like, all right, well, that sure is interesting. And they did this, right? I just got to point out, Edam Online here is like potentially one of the best resources I've ever used. And the fact that it usually comes up to the top of Google is the best thing ever. It should really come up every time I use the term etymology. It should be the first thing that comes up. And then I want to see this place never gets ruined. Please pump this place up and not ruin it. Or not pump it up and just keep it exactly where it is. Whatever you need to do. This is the most important place ever. We go over here to, right, I thought it was funny. Why did this catch my eye? Because it says anus. Mirabilis? What the fuck's that, right? Anus. Like, look at the funny word. And I'm like, that's funny that it goes anus, and I immediately read that it has to do with the year, right? It's like anus. How do we call year? It's like the end because it's the end. The year's the end. That's why we call it our anus. It's the end of our digestive system. But it comes from anu or anu, right? Which means end and beginning. Anu. Anu. But the idea here is that while we look into that, and that probably has to do with the god too, by the way. And I think I know who that is. We're getting there. We're getting there. Don't worry, we're getting there. We're getting there, my friends. We're getting there. So, Dryden is the right title of 60 publication of Dryden. Reference to 1666, Year of Calamities in London. That's why. No, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. Okay. So, since we now know that it's not anus, it's anu, right? Annus mirabilis, right? Which means year of wonders or a wonderful year, right? So when you see it's a new mirabili, right? Anu mirabili. Several words immediately started popping up to me, and after I connected anu to year, right? And it's obviously Mira, but I saw Abel, right? It's like, right, well, as if the wonders are like a verb, right? But then I saw more. I saw rabbi. And so now I know that the term rabbi comes from mirabilis here in Latin. That's left over from Latin pronunciation. And that if rabbi has been what we've called Jewish clergy with continuity over centuries, then now you know. But it kind of goes even deeper than that. I was kind of like, it's like, what the hell is mir, right? It's like, why is it mir? Why is Meyer, right? Why is it miracle? Why mir, right? So I'm having trouble with mir or mira. Right? It's as if it's like a reflection, right? And what happens if you call somebody a Meyer, right? But you can also admire somebody. But it means to view. It means to see, right? Has something to do with an image, a projection. But I'd also like to point out that it is phonetically me Ra. That's right. No other gods before me Ra. I've come to this before, but I wanted to go ahead and get there, right? And then there's Billy. And now if you swip this B upside down to a P, does it almost go Apili or Akili? But ultimately, I see API, API, APIS, APIS. All together, right? It's a year of wonders, and that's Abili, right? Mirabili. I latch on to the fact that I see Rabbi. I'm like, that is absolutely there. There's no, right? There's no moving away from it. So now I'm curious about Haradim, right? Haradim is the ultra orthodox Jewish clergy, or not clergy. I mean, all rabbi are Haradim. All rabbis are Haradim, right? But also then there's the families of Haradim that live in like the ways like in the 19th century. It's kind of like how Amish and Mennonites are, right? If we know those in Christian culture, okay. So the idea though is that when I look up what what Haradim means, and they claim that it means those who tremble, and I immediately, almost naturally, right, as a little God-touched kid, get like this kind of grimace on my face because it's like that most certainly should not be what it means. Let me take a hit before I get too angry about it. It can mean whatever they need it to mean. It means that but it's probably going to mean something potentially to even a great bulk of Haradim after I blow your fucking minds in a second. We have to appreciate that phonetically there is context locked in that enables us to link our etymological roots to other etymological roots of other languages in knowledge that they probably all hail through the same nexus points over time, right? And that language is homogenized, unhomogenized, rehomogenized. And since they all come from generally the same origin points anyways, it's always going to have the same meanings, but we have different amounts of sarcasm and nuance, right? And then poetry, but then potential lies, right? Over time, right? And then there's political agency that goes into that. But then it's also just cultural bias and general human corruption, which might just be natural. Damn, come on. Hurry up. That's how I get my universality, and I have universality in universal amounts of places, but truly that's how I get my universality in my end of metapistemology, phonetics, right, and etymology. And so what I kind of see here, and I come to this argument, it's like, no, there's like this huge group, this interest in Roman Orthodoxy, to put fear into God, right? To put fear into the culture, right? It's really the freedom. Religion is supposed to be about freedom and self-discovery, truly. And there's been so many cultures that have tried to use it as a means to like kind of harbinge revenge and then also kind of bring on like this amount of fear under something, but that might have been to create moralism in a huge way. It's hard to argue all the way for one way or another, right? But I just want to kind of add all that in. That's why it is that I immediately question this, because it's hard to, right? It's like right, I almost see it like the ha redeem, right? But like their high, right, redeems, right? To be redeemed in the highest way, right? I also say right her, right, or hair, right, dim, right, Edom, Eden, it says Eden, right? Her Eden. It could be, there's so many different ways, right? And I'm truly. I also gotta argue, I fucking love Zionism. The more I look at Zionism, the more I love it and see it as a concept. But you gotta understand, it's not a place. It's a place in your heart. It's a place in your mind. It's a place that you always see. It's a place that always has to move. And thusly, it can never really stay locked down. But I also appreciate the means for protections of these individuals across the board. Absolutely. Please, no genociding anybody, guys. Please. So we going over here, right? And the first thing I was curious about was the word dim, right? And I'm like, if my language is Germanic or whatever the fuck it's supposed to be, Germanic or blah 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 blah, Aramaic, blah 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 blah. We use an Arabic number system, motherfucker. We probably hail from an Arabic system. It's come from the Middle East there and about, right? Maybe from Babylon, more from Babylon. Maybe it's like somewhere in northern Africa. Is it that we are harnessing our dialects? Northern Africa, closer to Egypt, right? And so, is it that we have dim, right? And that is because dim, just like to us, means like things are dark, right? It's like a light is dim, right? It's kind of fading, right? It's dark. It's like tiny, but it's right. It's smaller than it used to be. It means a lot of different things. Dim can mean dumb, right? Because it's not too bright, not too smart, right? But then it could also be the food, like dim sum, right? So and then there's a dim sum, right? Now it's a joke, right? Oh yeah, one dumb crowd, right? So now you hear the nuance of dim just for us, right? As it pertains around obscure, dull, vague, opaque, faint, right? And so Google here supplies me against that weight, right? In what we would suppose is the literal meaning of dim by definition, right? You mean the obscure one. Not the one that relates to waning over time. Or any of those other ones you just mentioned. Right? So that's why I say literal is generally not one of the best ways to refer to any language, because everything, the literal is relative to what you think common sense is, and common sense is entirely relative to what you're already thinking, not what everyone else thinks. So either way, it's amazing because it goes to a mum, which is cute. Oh, like a mom, or like a flower. Aw. But truly, it goes a moon. So I asked, well, what's a moon, right? And I could probably think of a few words that contain this phonetically pretty easily, but I haven't gone that route and I don't want to go there right now. I have a direction already. I see that this goes to and so does Gemini. You see that this goes to a moon, right? A moon Ra. Right? Amen. Right? And I was arguing this myself. It's amazing. that they argue everything that I do, because I literally am surrounding this on my own end without any resources. I'm surrounding it and I'm doing it as a logician, and that's what's so amazing about it. But we see that it goes to Amun or Aman, right? Amen. An absolute transcription of the original Egyptian word, right? So now is it that you see who we might be referring to? And it might be completely impossible to move away from. But you'll see how Egyptian everything is kind of so. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Dim has to do with a moon. So what does that mean, har, the hare, Hare, before dim, dim? What does that mean for that? So I kind of go. Where'd it go? I don't know. This is spoilers. Doesn't mean anything yet. I'll duplicate this. So I believe I go hair in Hebrew. Right? To get the next done, right? And they go Arnavet. It's funny because this is the phonetic piece here in English, and it takes hair and says her. That's fine. So it's like hair, right? Hare, right? Bunny, a rabbit, right? Or a coney. I don't know what that is. That's a thing. I like a coney dog. So the idea here is that this sounds like her, right? And then I know of her, right? Because this looks like the word never, right? But never. I also see Eve, but in Roman, V's are U's. So this in fact goes Yahweh. Yahweh. Hi. And thus so you know that Eve likely goes EUE, potentially, in Adam and Eve's story. Atom and Yahweh. It's just fun way to think of it. Also, obviously I'm gonna see Aurora in that, so that's my own little fun bit. I love my Aurora. But either way, our Navet is what we get in Rabbit, right? Hair, right? But then I'm like, well, I almost go and I'm like, well, maybe it's thin, right? Hair, like a thin hair, right? But I'm like, no. And I jump over, right? I go fucking like out of nowhere, right? These are the real spoilers. I thought you had the spoilers. Right? Okay, Google, Vaporwave. It's air. It's air. Right? Heir, like that's like, you know, an heir to a throne, right? And there it is. Successor, heir, inheritor, legally. And does that in fact go to Yoresh? Rigidio. Or, right? But I immediately connect something huge on this, right? Because successor, heir, inheritor, right? I'm like, where does this come from? It's like, well, it's your, right? It's like your. Like, you know, before, right? I'm thinking like, oh, like back in your, like 10, you know, before your, yonder. But it's not that. It's your, Your, yours, right? You're the owner, the heir, the inheritor. Yours. It comes from Yoresh. Um, and essentially, I take it then, and I'm like, oh shit, that's where you comes from, which is also, by the way, a pronunciation of Yahweh's name, you. So altogether, this is very interesting because we see, right, why is it you? Because inheritor, right? You yourself might very well be like, right, quite quote a ghost. We are possessed as inanimate objects that seem to be able to move, right? We're not inanimate. And that's your soul, right? Your soul, your SOL. The sun in your chest. The idea here is that, okay, I'm going to play the same fucking shit, right? I do an etymological switch and then a definition, right? And then I think about different meanings, and then I could take har, right? And it's like, well, what do they say, right? I was like, hair, right? And I'm like, oh, like her, right? No, like air, right? And I'm like, oh, R. So essentially, I go to the same thing and I do it with Yoresh, and Gemini's already the fucking way, all the way there with me. It comes from the Hebrew root shin, or yud resh shin. Apparently, just a quotation mark. Okay, I'm just having this connection now. Just a quotation mark, right? Which means inheritor. Inheritor! This is to suggest that the quotation marks here were in fact potentially now reversively linked, right, to assert things in a sentence or a set that would have come from a different set or a different reference point. So now when we use quotation marks in our, right, glyphic system, we use inherited from that context. This isn't from me, this is inherited from me. So that's a new explosive thing. I'm telling you, enjoy your fucking Renaissance, you guys. Alright, so, holy shit. Etzer, which means to restrict. But truly, it comes from your. Right, so I now, right, Etzer. This is new for me, right? Right, Etzer. The end point. Quotation mark. Which means to stop or restrict. Beginning, end, right? Alpha, omega. Yud Russian. Yud Russian Ayin Sadresh. No, it's Sadi Grash. Damn it. You gotta say it right. Yud Russian Ayin Sadresh. Holy shit. Inheritor to stop or restrict. So interesting. Alpha and Omega, oh my god. Well, either way, right? Since I'm going here and I'm routing this, right? Years formerly, right? That's the Yor that I'm saying. What it means, right? Air in Hebrew, a movement, right? It means the inheritors, the successors, right? The heirs of Amun. Not just any Amun, Amun Ra. Which likely would have been, potentially, right? When it was after that Tutankhamun would have been relinquishing, right, spiritual rights back to Upper and Lower Egypt for them to celebrate God in any way that they wanted, not have to essentially continually, right, head through and only worship the sun god, right? But indeed, this sun god is right, his name is Yahweh, right? But that's Ra, that's Saul, right? But that's the Aten. It's ironic, right? Because Yahweh is one of multiple Greek gods, right? And you can find them depicted on Winged Wheel. Indeed, though, they go and they name them Yahweh, Jehovah. Jehovah. Either way, Yahweh is in fact the tetragram. When it is, right, that we take a look at how it is that there seems to be, right, a combination of the celebration of Yahweh, one of these Greek gods of multiple gods in their polytheistic tradition, right? And the sun god, Ra, Amun Ra, right? But then, right, in this time, right, before it was that Tutankhamun had relinquished spiritual rights to Upper and Lower Egypt to celebrate God in all of their forms as they knew him before, it was essentially something that Alexander the Great was interested in, I believe, right? Unless I'm getting my things crossed, but I don't think I am. It makes too much sense. It's how I'm culminating it now. Alexander the Great was interested in essentially culminating, right, all of the religions, right, based on the different polytheistic stuff, right? I think both in Greece and in Egypt at the same time, right? And Alexander the Great is a Greek, right? And he wanted to converge them all under one god, essentially, so that everybody had the same god and they could all go and celebrate them together, and there would be less divides, because he saw an issue with the division of all the different religions. There could be warring and differences from that. But, and Cleopatra, I think, was rolling with it, but that is why it is that we see, right, that Yahweh, this Greek god from a polytheistic tradition of the original Hebreonic Semites, right, essentially culminates now with the sun god Ra of Egypt. Even though they forget that it's not the sun god Ra, the Aten is the sun god, right? It's right. Is it Set or is it Ra? Right. I would say that Horus and Ra are closer to the Aten than Set, but this is Amun. And if you think that there wasn't Roman induction in this, right? Think about how it is that the Torah and like everything, right? And then the Christian theos is then reamalgamated together during Roman times, right? That's Augustus that does that. Same guy we named the 8th month of our 12-month year after. August. I do consider that AU at the beginning, though. That's also potentially a representation of Saul. But, right, you'll also take a look in Roman times and you'll see that there was a time, there's two sun gods. There was one that they celebrated higher for a time, earlier, and then there was another that they celebrated lower, right? They were, like, kind of on the same level of all the other ones, right? The planets became a big deal again. Right? And so we see kind of in all of this, right? But then there's the idea, right? You will know other gods before me, right? This idea that there will be no other gods other than me is how we would interpret it. But no, it's like the idea is that you have to play with it. It's not that there won't be any other god before them, right? It's that they are the first god and thusly the last. Can't be other. It's not that there can't be other gods, right? And now it is that you have to go into the Bible, right? And you have to see how much it is that you're reading about people who hate idolatry, quote unquote, and right, and like see how it is that they build themselves so high. And essentially, this is after it is that Augustus has taken the doctrines, right, and holy shit, you guys, like, during the time that Tutankhamun, the boy king, right, and potentially king of kings as well, right, and that's actually that's an Indian term. I'm still looking into the king of kings, seeing exactly just how big Tutankhamun was, right, because they weren't just big to Egypt, I don't think. I think they were big to Egypt, Greece, India, like over like the magnitude of the Levant. They were bigger than life, baby. And I have some etymologic evidence on that as well, but like because truly their name goes Tut Ankh Amun. Ankh, as in the symbol for rebirth, quite literally, tap in the tapestry of their name, Tut Ankh Amun. Right? Then they brought back the moon god. They brought back the worship of this, right? Queen Nefertiti, right, brings back the worship of Nefer. Right? And a celebration of the gods of Lower Egypt. Those usually, right, espoused in the form of, right, chimeric entities. Spiders, snakes. On the low end to watch over them from the below, right? Watch under them from below. Right, where it is that those in Upper Egypt would have appreciated like those of the sky, like the sky, the stars, the sun, the moon. Um, and essentially, it's this amazing consideration. It is truly what Tutankhamun symbolized, but like I don't necessarily know how far in Tutankhamun's right. I don't know how close they are to Queen Nefertiti. It almost you look at the cover-ups and the shit, right? Because the Romans don't like the idea of women rulers, and that is very obviously present in what it is that we read from the prophets of the Bible in the King James the 5th version that we see. It is very very obvious that that things have been altered, right? And that things have gotten heinously angry. The amount of hatred weight on it is insane. And it does in fact appear a great deal that a lot of this is over wanting to deface the idea of women in power the idea of women empowered by their sexuality. It's insane, but it's absolutely Roman, and it's absolutely it's like, oh shit. Because then you see in history there's a campaign of Romans defacing particular leaders, trying to deface the fact that, right, what were the faces and the noses showing on those giant statues? That they were women. And maybe that was them coming back for it 100 years later, right? It's insane. But truly, Rome is a culture of genocide and trying to erase others' history to make theirs look bigger. Um, and essentially, you kind of, oh fuck, right? We tell the story of, like, right, Jesus was born, blah 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 blah, blah, all the good stuff. He cleansed the second temple. It's like, no, do you know what happened? Do you know what happened? Right after that, after all that, the Romans come in and they just destroy the Temple of Solomon altogether, and all the Jerus, right? All the Jerus of Jerusalem, the towers that they've built up to keep their place intact, right? And watch out, they demolish all but two of them. Right? And so, in fact, only two would be left to stand upright amongst them. Um, we essentially move forward, right? And we see that the Romans have likely taken the word of the Torah, the Bible, the amalgamation that Alexander the Great was working towards with Cleopatra, everything, right? And then when Alexander the Great died, so did a great bulk of his plans. And that created a certain level of chaos, but then the control that ultimately was going to occur in the Roman Empire eventually. But Alexander the Great's ideals are towards unification. If there is truly a king of Hyrule, that is he. Um, and it's interesting. It's interesting. But it was also misguided what they were after. And that's why it is that the library of Alexandria, right, like, gets burned down. And when it is that we take a look at, it's just so, yeah, I saw that. I didn't do that. I did not do that. When it is that we take a look at all of that, it sure is intriguing to see how it is that, right, a big leader had big plans to unify, dies, cuts that short, people take advantage of it, makes the Roman Empire. FDR has big plans to unify, dies, people there take advantage of it, right? Something gets made. So, right, history likes to repeat. History likes to repeat. I've essentially started to ascertain this ability to just intuitively understand, right, the universality of a great bulk of our speech. And I have a huge knowledge of history on Egyptian culture, World War II culture, Civil War, Revolutionary War, World War One, little bit of external stuff surrounding other wars because of my interest in the history of like gun engineering, and so fortunately I had History Channel to kind of get me backed up on a lot of that. Um, But in Europe, right, I have a huge understanding of Roman culture, very solid understanding of Greek culture, not the best understanding of where the line is that gets drawn between those in history and chronology. I have a pretty good understanding of Russian history and pretty good. I mean, I have very dark spots all over Chinese dynastic history, unfortunately, and that is a huge shame because I need that. I need that because I'd be able to understand Indian history and culture even more directly through that. It's because I don't necessarily have a direct, obvious religion to call from in China. Obviously, I should go for Buddhism though. I think it's Buddhism that I need to hail, right? And I see quite a bit being offered from that realm because I see these concepts truly do all mirror over and over and over again, but it's like I think that all polytheism was linked. I think all polytheism was linked, and stories ultimately were held on to um, over time. And it's kind of what I argue about my interpretation of The Legend of Zelda and there being multiple games. It's just the same legend being reinterpreted by different cultures. Hence why there's a hero of time that wins it and a hero of time that could lose it. There's a winning team and a losing team. It's being told from different sides. Potentially a different hero of time surfacing on either end of the spectrum to continuously meet themselves. Linked to Ganon. The hidden one. Invisible. Oh, you. The great god whose name is unknown. I am pretty certain their name is Nefer. I have some digging to do. Bye bye.